dear ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the invitation that in a certain way goes back to the great work of our embassy. That's one point, and the second one is that to our friendship with the Rabbi Menachem Margolin, with whom we have very fruitful conversations in the interest of Jewish communities in Hungary and also outside of Hungary. Now, let me divide my speech into some parts. In the first part, I would like to speak about the Hungarian situation, if you don't mind. Not very thoroughly, because I don't think that you are that interested in or we should spend too much time with a lot of details. But then I would speak about the Western European situation, if I may, because we have here very tough debates on the situation regarding anti-Semitism and other issues, Holocaust denial, and all these questions. And in the third part, I would speak about the main topic of the conference, and that should be human rights, free speech, free media, where we also have some not very fruitful discussions with European institutions and European leaders who are slowly but surely going out of their office, and this is okay like that. So the Hungarian government, first of all, the short framework to that, the Hungarian constitution of the year 2011, which is the first really democratic constitution. We had a democratic constitution before that, from the year 1989, but this was accepted by a Hungarian parliament where the communists were still sitting. So it was like halfway, but the constitution itself was really a democratic one. Now, we have changed the constitution, and the Hungarian constitution of the year 2011, the Article 7 of that, states freedom of religion. This is very important, and this is practiced in Hungary. The government policy of the Hungarian government, and I can only speak, of course, for the current Hungarian government, practices a complete zero tolerance on anti-Semitism in the criminal code as well. It is declared that it is put down in the criminal code, and it is practiced in the politics as well, where we do not let anti-Semitic tendencies come up, and this is a fact of life. We have, of course, anti-Semitism in Hungary. Nobody would be so courageous to deny it. Nobody wants to deny it, but not in the political sphere, or not too much in the political sphere. There are radicals there, but they are in the number not that high that it would be that we could say that it's a social problem. In the society, we have rather the classical type of anti-Semitism, which is not good, and this is something that we are fighting against. And this is there. We do not deny it, but in Hungary, this doesn't seem to be a big problem, not for the Hungarians and not for the Jewish community. It's very important. The Jewish community doesn't have the feeling that the Hungarians or the Hungarian state would act against them. They live in freedom. They live in security. Although we have, I would say that surely the biggest density of Jewish people in Europe, in Budapest. Because in Budapest, you have only in Budapest, you have almost 100,000 Jewish people living. Altogether, the number of the Jewish people in Hungary is a bit more than 100,000. That means that around 90–95% of the Jewish people are living in Budapest. There are historical reasons for that. I do not want to go into details. Unfortunately, during the Nazi occupation of Hungary, with the collaboration of Hungarian government forces, the Jewish population was taken to Auschwitz. But there was a decision at the beginning of July by Admiral Horthy to stop the deportations. and that more or less saved the life of Budapest Jewry. Of course, later came the Aerocross movement, and there were many killings, unfortunately, but organized deportation have not taken place after the 6th of July, 1944. That's the historical reason why we have in Budapest so many Jewish people, because the Jews from the country were taken away to Auschwitz, but not the Budapest ones. They didn't have the time for it. And there was no, and the Hungarian government at that time, although partially collaborating with the Germans, but also stopping the deportation, they had a very difficult situation. I do not want to, in no way, whitewash it, because you cannot, but still. We have the luck and privilege to have a very lively Jewish life in Budapest that we support with all means. If I may tell you a number which is quite a high one to Hungarian circumstances as well, but also to probably European circumstances. The Hungarian government from 2010, which is led by Viktor Orbán, until now, which is still led by Viktor Orbán, has spent around 30 billion forint, which means around 100 million euros on Jewish community life. Either it is religious life or cultural life. I would make this division, because we have a very active civil life, an active Jewish civil life in Budapest, and also elsewhere outside of the country, outside of the capital. A very active Jewish life, festivals, klezmer music, and all that. You have in the heart of Budapest also active Jewish life. And we, on the other hand, support religious institutions of the Jewish people. That means that we are renovating synagogues, cemeteries, and we do everything that we can in order to keep up this great tradition that we have in Hungary. So the Jewish, as I said, the Jewish compatriots of us, they feel secure in Budapest or in the country. We have measured a very low number of atrocities against Jewish people. Not a physical atrocity has not even happened. You have some verbal atrocities or some silly and unacceptable notes written on house walls and all that, but not physical atrocities. You don't have any in Hungary. There is no atrocity against synagogues. There is no atrocity against cemeteries and all that. I think we can be proud of that because the Hungarian security forces are watching out. The only atrocity that we have, I have to be very honest here, and it's very. It's actually. I'm sorry that this is a fact of life. It comes from the Western European tourists who are. We have articles about that. That's true. That mainly British tourists, but also other tourists are beating up, or not beating up. Sorry, but they are kind of like aggressive towards Jewish people. In Hungary, as I said, we have police cases and press coverage on that. These cases are true, not very numerous, so we keep it under control. But that's a topic in the Hungarian media in the course of the last couple of weeks. If I may ask a politically motivated question, why do we wonder that, for example, British tourists are acting like that in Budapest if the second largest party of the UK is pretty openly, or the president of this party is pretty openly spreading anti-Semitic ideas? We cannot wonder if things like that happen because they are in connection with that. As in Hungary, this is forbidden. And you cannot do that because you would be politically dead, basically. You don't have this feeling, and the Hungarians, of course, you can never say that the Hungarians are tolerant. Everybody is tolerant. The Dutch, the Slovakians, and all that, they are also tolerant. But you have to in a certain sense, you have to, sorry for the wording because I don't have a better wording for that. In a certain sense, you have to educate your own people, and this is the task of the politicians, to say that what you can do and what you cannot do. And this is that we try to execute politically. So this is more or less the Hungarian situation. Good data, good numbers. As I said, I do not want to say that we don't have sorrowfully anti-Semitic incidents, but they are in the number very low. What we have experienced, and you should know that some friends here who are very eager to find out more about anti-Semitism, they have founded a civil organization which is Action and Protection Foundation. This Action and Protection Foundation is led by people who are close to the Chabad movement in Hungary. And they are researching and they are using researches from Europe, and they are measuring European tendencies. And the Hungarian government supports this foundation. Now we also have a very important European institution, not so very far away from Budapest, in Vienna, the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights, FRA in short. They are also measuring anti-Semitic actions, and the measuring is a bit worrying. In the major Western states, you have a rising fear of Jewish people, but also not only Jewish people, for their own life, for their own security. You have measurements like above 80% in the, as I said, major European states, France, Germany, UK. There, more than 80% generally, I do not want to go further into details, say that anti-Semitism is a major problem. Now, what we see in the media, in the Western media, and what we see in the Western political scene is that everybody wants to give the blame, the only blame, to the right-wing groups, which are undoubtedly there. But we don't think that this would be really the problem. Of course, you have unfortunately, neo-Nazi and right-wing groups in Germany and elsewhere. But the major problem, and that also is documented in the FRA report, comes actually from the Muslim migration that has happened in Europe already actually long ago, but the major flow started 2015. That's where actually the major part, I do not deny the right-wing extremist background, but the major part is coming from the Muslimic migration. If I may just mention one data which is important from the FRA report. The FRA report clearly shows that in Europe, 30% of the perpetrators hold extremist Muslimic views, 21% hold left-wing political views, and 13% hold right-wing political views. I'm not saying that this is the Bible here, but it is surely a serious survey, and I think that we have to watch out for that. And I think that, sorry to say that it will be also a bit political, I think that we do have the right, we Hungarians, although in some countries people are speaking about us in a very, how should I say that, a very irritating manner. But I think that we do have the possibility, and we do have the right to say what we see critically somewhere else. We also do have to swallow the critics, and we also do have to take action. If we see that the critics is logical, the critics is okay, we are not fine this and that, and we should change. We have changed on many points. When the second Orbán government from 2010 started to work, we have changed many of our legislation that was criticized by the European Commission. For example, the media law. The media law was criticized on many points, on 4 points, and the government changed it on 4 points. So if there was a will, okay, this time the last example that I can mention you was that there was critics from Europe on the administrative courts in Hungary that were now introduced by the law. We have revised this decision because we said that we do not need this problem with the European institutions. We do not need this tension with the European institutions. So what I would like to say with that is that we can revise our decisions that are probably with some conflicts. We are not, how should I say, we are not stubborn to stick to decisions that might be problematic. Although I can assure you that in the majority of European countries you have administrative courts. But in Hungary we cannot have administrative courts, and we accepted this kind of like not decision, but kind of like opinion from European institutions. Now, if I may just for a second still remain with the anti-Semitic topic, and then I go over for the last topic of mine, freedom of speech and so on, and it will be shorter than these parts. I mentioned the situation in Western Europe, and we can state that these are facts, that anti-Semitism is rising. What are the reasons for that? Of course, I'm not a sociologist, and I'm kind of like a politician or a political opinion maker. One of the answers that I can give you is definitely there, that if you look at the numbers, and if you look at some sayings of, for example, Mr. Corbyn, if you look at the numbers of the Jewish people in UK, and if you look at the numbers of people with Muslim religion in the UK, then you see that the second one is according to votes a more relevant group for the Labour Party. That might be one of the reasons that they, I should put it mildly, do not really care about the feelings of people, Jewish people there, because they do not count that much if it comes to an election. That's a very painful statement, but I think it's not so far away from the truth. We shall see, because to my knowledge, there will be elections in the UK. Will there be elections in the UK? Well, we will see what happens, anyhow. It's not only the UK, because we will have elections also in other countries, how the situation turns out, but I can assure you that the Hungarian situation remains firm, and our security forces are there, and it's not only a security question, because the most important issue is that Jewish people have a good life in Hungary, they feel free, they can do whatever they want, and of course they do not speak about it so much like many other Hungarians, but they are also not unhappy about the fact that we defended the country from an uncontrolled illegal migration and from the invasion of people who are not really the biggest friends of the Jewish people in Hungary or elsewhere. So, freedom of speech and freedom of media. Because it has been touched upon by many speakers tonight. And I would say that let me pose you some questions which might be a bit of conflict, but still, conflict is always good because we can talk about that and we can have nice questions on that. So, my first question is that is it a serious problem in Europe, freedom of speech and freedom of expression? For the moment, I would say no. I don't see any tendencies that anybody would be narrowed in saying their own opinion. Anybody would be obstacled to say its own opinion, from Romania to the UK, from Finland down to Greece, or any other non-member states of the European Union. We have, from the right-wing perspective, what has been already said, we have a problem that whenever we say an opinion, it will be put down as an undemocratic opinion, and then they say that you are building up a dictatorship, and they start with Orbanistan and I don't know what, which is completely bullshit, and you kill the conversation immediately with that. And yes, it is a problem that we have a politically correct dialogue in Europe and in the media as well. Political correctness is something that is guiding the media. But whenever political correctness is there, there is no real debate.
You mean state media? You mean state media?
No, there is no state. There is state media, but I'm not speaking about state media. I'm speaking about politicians, and I'm speaking about media in general. Not the Hungarian, also the European media. I mean, if you read Spiegel, Süddeutsche, Krone, I don't know, Guardian, and all that, the politically correct opinion is the one that you can read there. Whenever it comes to an opinion that we would, for example, say, they either do not let it happen, do not let it publish, or they turn it against us and they say that, okay, these are the dictators, like Mr. Juncker used to greet the Hungarian Prime Minister by arriving to Brussels, that the dictator is coming. How on earth he takes himself the freedom to call my Prime Minister a dictator, and years later he goes to Trier, to the birthplace of Karl Marx, and puts a rest down on the tomb or birthplace, or I don't know, of Karl Marx, who was an openly anti-Semitic philosopher and the founder of this social experiment that they called communism. And this he does in the name of the European Commission, so in the name of all of us, 28 member states. This is something that an example that I cannot forgive him, and I personally, as also, if I may say, as also son of people that raised up in communism and that were risen up in an anti-communist notion. That was my past. That was, and that is my present as well. But going back to the media freedom, we might have here, I mean, we means right-wing, thinkers, might have a problem here, because whenever we say something, it is put down as an undemocratic bullshit. Now, do we have to deal with this issue of free media, freedom of speech, and all that? My answer is yes and no. Of course, we have to deal with that, and whenever it turns up, whenever we see that in the world we have situations like that, then of course we can criticize that, or we can give advice to it, or we can help, or we can show goodwill for these countries to solve their problems. For example, if I may say, some months ago, I was invited by the government of Uganda, to give advice on the civic law of Hungary, which is a great honor, because I think that I don't know, I do not care what Mr. Soros thinks about that, but I am proud of our civic law, and I'm very well in picture of what we have put down in our civil law, and the law is okay, so we can give advice not only to Uganda but also other states as well. Should we interfere? Should we give lessons? No. If we start giving lessons, especially to each other, if governments come up here and they give advice to us what we should do and what we shouldn't do, whereas if they receive leaders of pretty much openly undemocratic states and they do not say a single word, then we have a problem in Europe, I would say. And I had a very interesting conversation with a very, I would say, knowledgeable person today in Brussels who had a leading position here in European institutions earlier. And he rightfully said that the Chinese president comes to Brussels or elsewhere, nobody says a single word. But sometimes one has the feeling that Hungary and Poland is the biggest problem of the world. Sometimes we have the feeling, and also, I mean, you know, other countries will come if we do not change our politics. The Romanians are in the pipeline. I hope that Slovakia doesn't get there. But if we start, and that's my last word, if I may say it, if we start politically shooting at each other, that means that inside the European Union, we will go down, and it will be a catastrophe. And no matter what people think about us, we know that we are good Europeans and we are eager Europeans, and we do not want to step out of Europe, but we keep ourselves the right to say our opinion. We would expect, in exchange for that, to listen to this opinion and not to speak about us as if we were nothing and nobody. And that's what we would expect. We would like to make Europe better. It sounds a bit, you know, let's make Europe better. It sounds a bit, how should I say that, too overwhelming. But it's still, I would say that why I cannot have the right as a Hungarian State Secretary to say that we can make Europe better. It's not only the privilege of Mr. Juncker and other people, who, by the way, managed in 5 years of being the President of Commission that the Brits are leaving the European Union and the illegal migrants are in. I wouldn't call it a success. Thank you very much.